Okay, so I want to start off today with a little story that will make sense in a second. Okay, so probably starting at 6th and 7th grade, I had a pretty set group of friends, right? They were pretty great, and I thought that they were going to be my best friends forever. And it was probably a group of like 6 to 8 girls, and I spent all my time at school with them. I hung out with them on the weekends, and they pretty much consumed all of my free time, right? So this continued, and then it started where I was bringing them to church, and they were coming to church events with me and stuff. And I was really excited about that. You know, I was like, yes, this is good. So probably summer before 8th grade comes, right? And going into this summer, I was very excited. I thought it was going to be a lot of fun, right? And my friends start making some very interesting decisions with who they were hanging out with, what they were doing on the weekends, stuff like that, the language that they were using, the people that they were talking about, you know, all of that. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I don't know if I like this very much, you know? And so I prayed a lot about it for a long time and decided, you know what, I'm still going to be friends with them. I'm just not going to participate in the stuff that they're doing, right? So I did. I continued to be friends with them. And they didn't do bad stuff all the time. It was just sometimes. And when they did, I just wouldn't go, or I just wouldn't participate. And so that kind of continued until probably summer after 8th grade. They started wanting to do this stuff every weekend, right? And by that point I was like, okay, well, I just won't hang out with them then. So girls being how girls are, they were like, no, if you don't want to do this stuff with us, we're not going to be your friend at all, right? Petty. And I was like, you know what, that's fine, I don't need you anyways. So that was like how that was. And for a couple weeks I was like, this is great, like I didn't need them. And then like a couple weeks later I was like, this sucks, I'm really lonely. And so going into freshman year, I was really optimistic though, right? Like I was like, you know what, this is gonna be great. Like if you don't know how BA works, they have like 5 middle schools, right? And then they put you all together in one freshman academy. So I was like, you know what, I've been stuck with this one middle school, now I'm gonna have 5 other middle schools to hang out with, like I'll make friends so fast. And if you know me pretty well, I'm a pretty social person and I like people a lot, so anytime that I have the opportunity to hang out with people or to do something with people, that's probably where I want to be. So this was a really like lonely time for me, and it's really hard for me to be vulnerable about that, probably just because I really like to be that person that has a lot of friends, and I've always been that person that has a lot of friends. So for me to literally not have any friends was like, this kind of is weird, you know? And so going into freshman year, I was really optimistic and really excited. And that optimism went away very quickly. I went into freshman year, you know, and it started, and I made some friends, and things were good. But I quickly realized that, like, by the time freshman year rolled around, a lot of people had already made their friend groups by then, you know. So it was like I'd have friends in my classes, but not really people to hang out with outside of that, you know. And I'm also the type of person that I probably won't tell you that anything's wrong unless you ask. And so I really tried to make it seem like nothing was going on, right? So that continued probably like all of freshman year. But there was one senior that stuck by my side that whole entire time, and her name is Kaylin Price. So if you know her, she graduated a few years ago. Shout out to her. So she, unknowingly what was going on, kind of just would ask me, hey, like, do you want to go get coffee after church on Sunday? Or do you want to get lunch after church on Sunday? Or let's go do this, or let me pick you up from school, right? And it got to where she picked me up from school almost every single day, and that was my favorite part of every single day. And never once did I tell her, you're my only friend, right? Like, you're my only actual friend that I hang out with all the time, right? But she was, and that was like the biggest thing for me ever, right? And that was the coolest thing. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, because like that was probably the most like worst time in my life, in the longest period that I've ever had, where my faith was so distorted and gone. For a lot of people that probably doesn't seem like a big big deal. Like, a lot of people are like, I like being by myself, like, leave me alone, right? But I'm not that type of person. So for me, this was a huge thing that I didn't have people around me all the time. And this was a huge storm for me, right? And at the time, I had no really idea, but now, as a senior, looking back, like, I'm like, dang, Kaylin was the only calm in that storm. So, from there, I'm going to go ahead and read this passage to you. It's Luke 8, 22 through 25, if you want to pull that up in your Bibles. It says, "One day Jesus said to the disciples, 'Let us go to the other side of the lake.' So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, Jesus fell asleep. A terrific storm came up and suddenly on the lake. The disciples woke him and said, 'Master, Master, we're going to drown.' Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and the waves. The storm stopped and all was calm. 'Where's your faith?' he asked. In fear and amazement, the disciples asked one another, 'Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him.'" So, my first point on your guys' handout sheet is Jesus led them into the storm. So tonight I kind of just want to, something for me that's really helpful when I'm reading scripture is kind of just breaking it down. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing tonight. So what I just read to you, we're going to kind of split that up and talk about it. So I'm going to reread the first part of that passage where it says, "Let us go to the other side of the lake." So they got in a boat and set out. So I kind of was reading in my Bible, and my Bible, how it's set up is like there's a scripture, right? And then at the bottom there's like little footnotes that basically like tell you like what the heck is going on, because if you're anything like me, you're usually confused. And so I always immediately like go and read that, right? So I was reading that, and it was basically asking itself like, do you think Jesus knew what he was getting the disciples into? And then it was like, well, yeah, like it's Jesus, you know, like he obviously knows what he's doing. And I think we often forget that. I think we often fail to realize that who Jesus is and what he can do, and that he wouldn't bring us into a storm like this if he didn't know what was going to come out of it, right? And this storm came suddenly and without warning. So things in life happen like this. I think that anything, literally like you fail a test, right? Like within 5 seconds that's going to go in the grade book, and that changes so quickly. And living in Oklahoma, we should know that the weather changes very, very quickly. It was raining like today, and now it's sunny. It was sunny when I got here. So we should be very used to that. So I did some research. I was like also reading my footnotes again. And where the disciples were at this lake, they fished at this lake all the time, right? And you have to like realize that these were fishermen. Like the disciples were pretty used to this. Like they've had to have been in a storm like once or twice in their lives, you know, like this isn't something new. But they waited until it got really bad to wake Jesus up, right? And I think we do that a lot. We're like, oh, hey, like we don't need you yet, but yeah, now we do, right? You like think you can handle it? And that brings me to my second point, which is that Jesus seemed to leave them alone in the storm. It's your second point on your handout, by the way. So I'm going to reread that part of the passage as well. And it says, "As they sailed, Jesus fell asleep. A terrific storm came up and suddenly on the lake. The disciples woke him and said, 'Master, Master, we're going to drown.'" So this is the only place in the Bible actually that mentions Jesus sleeping, which is ironic to me and kind of funny because if they're in this terrific storm, right, like the boat must be rocking, it's probably raining, and Jesus is just chilling like in the corner, right, hanging out. And so I think that we often feel alone and like Jesus isn't there in that boat with us, and a lot of the time he is, but I think a lot of the time he's sleeping or he's just waiting for us to need him or for us to call on him. Because in reality, like Jesus was with them the whole time. And so I have a story time part 2 about that. So over the summer, I got the opportunity with Easton Moore, a lot of you know him, to go and do like an internship type thing at Camp Wow. So basically you like get a mentor for a week and you basically follow them around and you get to see what it's like to work at Camp Wow. So my mom doesn't even know this story, so I'm sorry, but because you're not gonna like it. But it was like, when you're at Camp Wow as a worker, right, you kind of get to do whatever you want. So it was like 1:30 in the morning, and at the time it seemed like a really good idea. But we were like, Easton and I and 2 other Camp Wow workers decided, hey, let's go canoeing, right? It's 1:30 in the morning. So we decided to go canoeing, and if you've ever been to Camp Wow, there's like a little pool thing, with all the cool stuff in it, and then there's like a dock, and that's the dock where like you go tubing off of. So that looks like a little lake, right? Well, it gets pretty big once you get back there a little bit. So Easton decided that he just wanted to swim by himself like a weirdo. So he just stayed by the dock and swam. And the 3 of us were like, okay, we're gonna go canoeing, right? Keep in mind, I have on a long sleeve shirt, a sweatshirt, sweatpants, and chacos because it's chilly at night and we're at the water. So we're in this canoe, we get out and we're going for it, right? And we get out there pretty far enough to where you can't really see like where Camp Wow is, like you can't see anymore. And we're like, we're kind of tired, like maybe we should just like let the boat float around for a little bit, And so we're just chilling and things are going fine. And then all of a sudden, like, we feel a tree hit the bottom of your canoe, right? And we're like, okay, whatever. We get kind of stuck on the tree, but like, we just get off. We use our paddles and get off of it and keep going. So there keeps getting more trees, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not gonna end well. And next thing I know, the canoe flips. And we're in the water. And so, where we were in this water, it was really deep, right? And on both sides of like the shoreline were like rock walls. So like, where you would have to swim quite a while to get to somewhere where you could get off get on the shore, and walk back. So we were kind of looking around, and our lantern that we had was gone, and my chacos were gone, and we're all just hanging out. And yeah, we can't touch the ground, right? And so to get the canoe back up, you have to we tried to flip it over, but then it just sinks because it fills with water, right? So we were like, we have to get this canoe out of this water. And we have to find a way to lift it so that we can get it above the water and flip it, which we did. But then we couldn't get back into it. So 2 hours later, we're back in the boat. It's 3:30 in the morning. We finally get back to where we're supposed to be and go to sleep, right? But I'm telling you what, when I was dealing with that, we were all crying, and none of us pictured Jesus in that boat. That is all I have to say about that. And so that's something that I think, in that moment, if we had all pictured Jesus in that boat, we would have been feeling a lot better about our lives because we were freaking out. I really want us to change our perspectives and picture Jesus in the boat no matter what the circumstance is. No matter what your storm is, Jesus being in that boat helps a lot, even if he's sleeping, right? Jesus could have been asleep in that boat, but if he was there, I would have felt 10 times better, I promise you. We have to have faith that Jesus is there or we'll drown, as you should know. So, my third point is trusting Jesus through the storms. That's your third point on your handout. So I'm going to reread the end of this passage. I don't know where it went. Okay. Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and the waves. The storm stopped and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." So, the thing about this is I think that these storms often expose the areas in which we aren't trusting in God. We tend to have this view that life is all good and that we can handle things, like I said earlier. But a lot of it is trusting, and a lot of it is having faith that he's going to get us through it. And in that canoe, it was really easy to act like I knew what I was doing when it was calm waters, right? But the second that canoe flipped, we were not in calm waters anymore, and it's not as easy to fake it. We need to start seeking Jesus before the storm. I can't emphasize that enough. We really have to start seeking Jesus when we're not in the midst of the storm. Things get a lot easier if you're already on the right path with Jesus, when you're not already in the middle of something really crazy. So, if you get anything from my talk tonight, what I would have liked you to take was that trusting in Him is the most important thing you can do. And seeking Him is the most important thing you can do. And seek Him always, and not just in the little things. I'm going to pray for us. Okay. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for bringing us here today. God, I pray that as we go into this next song, that you just fill the room and come in this room. God, thank you so much for bringing us here. And it's in your name I pray, amen.